Welcome into the Warchant.com report. I'm Jeff Cameron of ESPN Radio, alongside Ira Schoffel, Warchant.com, and of course the founder and administrator of Warchant.com, Gene Williams. Florida State getting set to take on Louisiana Monroe Saturday night, 7:20, kind of an odd kickoff time on the ACC network. Of course, Florida State coming off a loss, and unfortunately a loss that featured a devastating blow potentially with DeAndre Francois' injury, as he is out for the remainder of the season, will have surgery. And here's Jimbo Fisher talking about DeAndre Francois.
DeAndre, he suffered a torn patella tendon in his kneecap, which is actually a very rare thing. I've never actually had one as a coach. And it's a very, it's usually an older type injury when you're in your late 20s or 30s, but that was the injury. It was not an ACL, an MCL, or anything like that. And he'll, as of right now, the plans are for him to undergo surgery in the morning, which will obviously put him out for the rest of the year.
There again is Coach Fisher having to talk about DeAndre Francois, his starting quarterback that is lost in Game 1 for the remainder of the season. Obviously, our condolences to DeAndre Francois. Best wishes to him as he fights to come back after surgery in the coming weeks. Gene, let's start with you right off the bat. The impact of losing DeAndre Francois for the season.
Well, you have to change your expectations a little bit, don't you? I mean, you got to think going in, I think as well as they played against Alabama, you lost, but you think maybe you can clean up some of those special teams things. So all in all, if Francois is healthy through that game, you think, they have a pretty good shot at doing it. I don't know now. There's a couple things that jump out at me. First of all, that road game at Clemson, you're playing a really good defensive freshman quarterback going up there. I thought before that was about a 50-50 proposition. I don't think so much now. I definitely think Clemson has the advantage. And the other thing is when you have the ups and downs, talented of a true freshman, but you're going to have those ups and downs. Is he going to have that down? There's going to be the game. Is it going to be an NC State, a Syracuse, or somebody like that you didn't expect to lose to, that you wouldn't have probably lost to before? Now that opens the door. Coach Fisher was asked, has he started a true freshman quarterback before? We have to go back to Auburn. He did it one time. Gabe Gross, who actually went on to play baseball, pretty good baseball player, but started his freshman year. What Jimbo didn't point out, you know what the record was that season?
No.
3-8.
Tough year.
So starting, at least his history, starting that true freshman quarterback, I'm not definitely not going 3-8, but still the point is it's tough to do that. And there's only one team in the history of college football that won a national championship with a true freshman quarterback starting most of the season. And you should know that, right? Because it's one of your teams.
Oklahoma, that's right,
1985, Jamel Holloway, the last one to do it.
So say Jamel Holloway, but
yeah, history's not on FSU's side, but then again, last season, Jalen Hurts one play away from doing it as a true freshman. So it's tough to do. I think you got to change your expectations a little bit. I still think this would be a very good season, but maybe national championship, you might want to slow your roll.
Yeah, you probably don't expect to win a national title with a true freshman, but I think it could be a really good team. I guess talk a little bit about your expectations, the emotional impact of losing somebody like DeAndre Francois, and how do you think the team will respond?
Yeah, from talking to the guys that we spoke to after the game and then again on Monday and Tuesday, I think they're disappointed for DeAndre Francois. I don't think that this is last season when they lost Derwin James in the second game of the season, I think there was a lot of players shell-shocked by that. He was an emotional leader. He was a guy that guys rallied around, and he was a guy that impacted the team in so many ways. I think DeAndre Francois is a little bit different. He's not an emotional leader. He's much more of a leader by example. So I think that they feel bad for him as a teammate because they respect the work he put in, how diligent he was, how hard he worked at practice, film study, all of those things. But I don't feel like he was the guy they all rallied around. So I think from that standpoint, I think they'll be able to bounce back pretty strongly. The big question, again, is just, is there a big drop-off in terms of, like Gene said, the mistakes and things like that? Because I don't think the players aren't shaken emotionally by this, I don't believe.
It gets interesting now. We talk about fan expectations. I want to get both of your opinions about the expectations of what's possible now that you have a true freshman. For example, are the ACC title aspirations now gone? The potential to make the college football playoff, is that now off the table in your mind, Gene?
I don't know if it's off the table, but I think before, we'll get everybody's taking this, we talk about this. What are the percentages? What did you think? At this point, we get out of that Alabama game and DeAndre Francois is healthy. What's your percentage of winning the ACC and getting the play? I don't know. It'd be somewhere 50-50, maybe a little less. Now I'm thinking, man, maybe like 10-20%. I hate to do that, but I think it's a little bit of a long shot at this point to effectively have to run the table for the next 12 games.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, and I like James Blackman from what we've seen, the limited action we've seen and what we've heard about him. There's a lot of excitement about what he brings to the table. But I agree. I thought you could make a case that Florida State was the better all-around team than Alabama, except for special teams. If FSU doesn't just have a disaster on special teams, if they're just competent on special teams, I think FSU might win that game. They had a chance. They were, in their first 7 possessions, I had an article on Warchant.com this week, in the first 7 possessions, Florida State was inside Alabama's 35 5 times. They had so many chances to score. They only came up with 1 score and 7 points. If they score right before the half with a botched pass interference call, then they get the ball to start the second half. They go down and get to the 35 again. If they score on those 2 possessions, they put pressure on Alabama. We'd be talking about this team totally differently. So, as Gene said earlier, if DeAndre Francois was healthy, I wouldn't have left that game thinking this season's any different than what I went going into that game. But now you just wonder, can James Blackman do it consistently? I think he's talented. The question is, are they going to you don't have any margin for error, and you have to go to Clemson to win the ACC. That's a lot to ask for a true freshman.
We're getting ahead of ourselves, I think, a little bit here. I will tell you that I'm pretty confident that Florida State's going to be in a position to maybe achieve their goals this year. I think the defense is going to play dominant. I think Florida State will be able to run the football against non-Alabama fronts. That will certainly help a young quarterback out. I think James Blackman at 6'5" and a really good thrower of the football will see a pared down offensive playbook. Jimbo calls good games for young quarterbacks, being a former quarterback himself. We'll have a chance to talk more about this, and we'll also look back at that Alabama game when we return on the Warchant.com report. Welcome back to the Warchant.com report. And as you well know by now, that Jimbo Fisher is forced to name a starting quarterback other than DeAndre Francois. And he names a true freshman in James Blackman, who has really impressed Gene and Ira. This is a kid that came in here somewhat unknown and really never figured to play this early. Was not an early enrollee, but picked up the offense very quickly, turned heads at the open practice. I know those of us in the media were very impressed with what we saw. He's 6'5", skinny as a beanpole, but we'll see. He's a great passer. I guess initially your thoughts of what we're going to get out of James Blackman, how he got to FSU. Give me a little background here.
Well, that's an interesting way. Right, he was a little bit under the radar in recruiting, especially early on. It was a year ago, last summer, July, when he showed up to Jimbo Fisher camp. He was a guy on the radar. He's a guy they liked. But Jimbo Fisher loves to see especially his quarterbacks in person. He's got to see him in person and work with him. I don't think I've seen him that giddy since Jameis. He was just the way the kid went out there and just tore it up. It was just, you could say, okay, this kid's legit. Got the offer on the spot a couple months later, committed. Rest is history there. But a lot of other schools offered him after that once FSU got on him, and he kind of blew up on the scene, got bumped up to a 4-star. Here's a guy, first thing you notice, that ball pops out of his hand. He's got, Jimbo, let's call it the hand talent. He's got that. You like the size. It's 6'5", at least the height. So he's able to see over teams. That's really good too. And a little bit like Jameis in terms of the ability to run. He can be a little sneaky, he can run when he needs to, but he's definitely a pass-first quarterback. You're not going to see that. And the most impressive thing, like you alluded to, Jeff, is what we've been hearing the last month or so. The last scrimmage, I had actually heard some inside scoop in the last scrimmage that he went out there, got a lot of reps with the first team and tore it up and looked really good, even against FSU's first-team offense.
What do you expect Jimbo Fisher to do, how he'll call the game for James Blackman? I think to Gene's point, it's amazing to hear Fisher say about a young quarterback, ball just makes sense to him. That's a good sign that this offense is not overwhelming James Blackman.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that Jimbo will still be aggressive. I mean, he'll tone it down a little bit. It's not going to be probably the entire playbook that DeAndre Francois had. But if you look back at the times that Jimbo's had to do this, where he's had to go to an emergency quarterback, he did it with E.J. Manuel when Christian Ponder got hurt in 2009. He did it with Clint Trickett when E.J. Manuel got hurt in 2011. He also did it when Jameis got suspended with Sean McGuire going up to Clemson. And really in all of those games, they threw the ball a lot. Clint Trickett threw for over 300 yards at Clemson. Sean McGuire threw for over 300 yards at home against Clemson. EJ didn't throw for quite as many yards, but he had a really nice game. I think he was 15 of 20 passing in that game up at Wake Forest. So he's going to let those guys make plays. He's going to let James Blackman make plays. I don't think he's going to tone it back dramatically. But, of course, he can rely on the running game. The nice thing is you do have a good running game. You've got really good running backs. You've got an offensive line you feel good about. You've got a very good defense. If you can shore up the special teams, now you have a lot of things in place to kind of as a safety blanket for a young quarterback.
Well, that allows us to segue nicely into what we wanted to talk about, which was a review of the Florida State-Alabama game. Frankly, this is the easiest game in the world to analyze, almost more than any other time that we've been doing this, guys. Florida State played Alabama toe-to-toe. Florida State's offensive line vastly improved. Florida State's defensive line, as advertised. Statistically speaking, the two teams are separated basically by 29, 30 yards, something along those lines. And it all came down to the fact that the special teams absolutely dropped the ball. We could be here all day, whether you're talking about timeouts that had to be called, whether you're talking about 12 men on the field, whether you're talking about a blocked field goal, whether you're talking about a blocked punt, whether you're talking about a botched return of a kick in Keith Gavin, whether you're talking about a kid not fielding punts. Florida State was bad in every facet of the special teams, and it ended up costing them the football game. They were so awful that you kind of just scratch your head. How does it happen, Ira, that Jimbo Fisher, who is a master at attention to details, has a team that now for 3 years running really been pretty bad on special teams?
It is inexplicable because one of the things Jimbo does, especially on the coverage units and the protection units, they use their best players. It's not like there used to be a time when in college football where you'd see a bunch of walk-ons out there and kind of placeholders, just bodies. That's not how it is. Florida State plays their best players on special teams. He makes them compete for the right to play on special teams, and they just haven't gotten the job done. And what's weird about this is it's not like the same offenders every time. Last year, obviously, they didn't punt well. Ricky Aguayo had some issues kicking, and they also had some coverage issues at times. The protecting the punter, I mean, it was a disaster. Getting that punt block was a disaster. Getting the field goal block was a big momentum switch. And then the Keith Gavin play, again, I just think, and you pointed this out on your radio show, that Keith Gavin, even the big return he had in the Orange Bowl that gave everybody so much confidence in him as a return guy.
It was a botch.
It was a mistake. He looked like he was hesitating. He didn't know if he should come out or not. Kermit Whitfield, the other returner, was mad at him and stomping
Please don't
as
go.
he ran by him.
Yeah.
And he just got lucky the fact that he was much bigger than that Michigan DB, but he didn't have that luck against Alabama.
Yeah, it's very, very frustrating. Is this something, Gene, now if you look at it, you got to wonder, is this something that they'll be able to correct in a relatively short period of time? Because it has something that's plagued them for a while now. What do you expect to see moving forward?
I think for the most part you can fix it. Obviously with your kicking, the punting, inconsistent on punting, I don't know there's so much you can do. You just hope he kind of catches on. But a couple of those big blocks that we talk about, how important that block was before half on the field goal, and also obviously the first big play of that third quarter that kind of started the momentum, the block punt. And those are some blocking schemes that FSU obviously got exploited on. And that's one of Alabama's 97 assistants or whatever probably spent the whole offseason looking at every Florida State special teams play. And to their credit, they figured out a way to exploit that, and they took advantage of it. Those are things you can go back on film and fix. And I think maybe to Ira's point on Keith Gavin, the thing you can fix too is you're going to have to bench him. I think you love what he did against Michigan, but man, he's making a lot of mistakes back there. I think you got to you tried a lot of different guys, put another guy back there. So yeah, for the most part, I think you correct most of these things, and you're going to have to. If it's going to do that outside chance and run the table and win the ACC, the special teams have to be vastly improved.
And this is really frustrating because the defense was the star of the show on Saturday night and gave you every opportunity to win the game. They didn't even break down after Alabama had 5 consecutive possessions inside the 50. Florida State's defense still gave you a chance to be in the football game. Alabama, 4.5 yards per play on offense for this game. Their worst offensive performance in 37 games. That's how good Florida State's defense was. Do you realize that? You have to go back 3 seasons, more than 3 seasons, to find an offensive performance in terms of yards per play that was as poor as this for Alabama. That's how good FSU's defense was. I guess we would ask the question, are they as advertised for you?
I think they were very good. I mean, I think the best thing that I saw out of them, we knew they had talent. We knew that they've got a lot of experience, guys that can play at a high level. Derek Nottie, Josh Sweat, DeMarcus Christmas played really well. The linebackers, I mean, across the board, they played really well. What I was impressed by was the communication. You saw DBs and linebackers talking before plays. You didn't see any of the panic where somebody's a receiver's uncovered or there's mass confusion, which you saw so much at times the last couple of seasons. You didn't see any of that. There was the one big pass breakdown where the safety bit up. The 2 safeties miscommunicated during the play, and Calvin Ridley got beat Sanford Samuels for the touchdown. But for the most part, you didn't have those breakdowns, and with the talent they have, that's a huge sign. Now, the one thing I would say, and again, I wrote about this week, is Alabama kind of shut it down in the second half. So a lot of those stats are basically, they had some short fields as well, but they didn't try to throw the ball when they didn't make Jalen Hurts. They didn't ask Jalen Hurts to make any tough throws. Now, part of that's respect for Florida State, but you're going to face better quarterbacks throughout the season, and I think those will be better tests.
Can they save the season? Can the defense carry this team to, say, 10 wins and give themselves a shot?
Well, that's the hope right now. I think that's why there's still some optimism about this season. If the defense is as good as it looked, the other night, you think, boy, if these guys can consistently play that well and cut down a couple of those breakdowns like they had in the Calvin Ridley long touchdown, this would be really good, especially early when you're breaking in a new quarterback. You need that defense to carry the day. And to Ira's point, too, I mean, the stat that threw me is after those first 3 series, which included that long play to Calvin Ridley, the touchdown, I think it was like the next 8 series for the rest of the game, Alabama averaged 2.1 yards per play. This is one of the best and most diverse offenses in the country, and you're able to do that to them. So that does give you a lot of optimism because defense wins. I mean, at the end of the day, you can shut teams down, you can win a lot of games.
Florida State didn't figure to be able to run the football in this game. They chose not to run DeAndre Francois. I found that surprising. Traditional runs don't typically work against Alabama, so it was not a surprise to me to see that they came out throwing the football, had a lot of early success throwing the football. Wide receivers played pretty well in this game. Mr. Izzo at tight end played pretty well in this game. Anything stand out to you?
Yeah, I think probably the only disappointing thing was that there were still some missed opportunities on the blitzes. Alabama blitzed a lot. They couldn't get pressure with their front 4, so they blitzed 5, 6 guys. They blitzed safeties, corners, linebackers. Pressure came from all different angles. Those are opportunities, and then you got to make them pay. Florida State's offense, part was DeAndre Francois, but part was their wide receivers. They didn't make Alabama pay for that. James Blackman's going to see a lot of blitzes as the season goes on. These receivers have to be on point because he's got to make those quick throws. Hot
reads, checks, those kinds of things. We'll see how the freshman handles it. He may handle it very, very well. Could be a strength of his game. Offensive line, Gene, we're always so worried year in and year out. At least to my eyes, they played better. Your thoughts?
I give about a B+, A-. But, at Ira's point, how much of that falls to them. I think Alabama realized early on they weren't getting that much pressure with their front 4. They had to start bringing the blitzes and different things, and to FSU's fault, they didn't take advantage of that. But I know some of that's on the quarterback, some of that's on the receiver. Coach Fisher said breaking off routes, the pass protection, maybe the running back, some other issues happened there. But for those guys, that starting 5, this is a very encouraging start because you went against one of the best defensive lines in the country. You're able to hold your own there. That is another really good sign. If you're breaking in a freshman quarterback that, as you said, he's skinny as a rail, you can't lose another quarterback in this thing, so they've got to protect better for him, and I really was encouraging what to see. But this is to Jimbo Fisher. Every team in the world is going to see this. They're going to be bringing the house at James Blackman in these games, and how can FSU respond to it? The good news is the offensive line looks like it's about to handle it. You just got to clean up some other stuff.
Got to create some balance and run the football. I think they will. It'll be interesting to see when we come back. We'll tell you what to watch for in a game that just got a lot more intriguing with ULM come Saturday night, and also we'll do our picks here on the Warchant.com report. All right, wrapping it up on the Warchant.com report. As for the game against Louisiana Monroe, again, 7:20, I would invite you to go to the Warchant.com game day page for a complete list of game-watching locations, which are namely your computer. For ESPN3.
Well, some
bars might have it. I tease. Yes, indeed. But that's the situation, Florida State and ULM. And all right, gentlemen, we also have to get to 3 things to look for, at the very least, for Florida State fans going into this game against ULM. We all expect that they'll win the football game, but what are you most excited to see? A lot of times, keys to the game are things that Florida State has to do to win. This doesn't fit that bill. What are you most interested in seeing?
Well, the obvious answer, seeing how a freshman quarterback does, James Blackman, he's going to put up some nice numbers because there's such a mismatch. But kind of how does he carry himself? How does he interact? Is he comfortable out there? I mean, how quickly will he pick things up? That I want to see. I want to see a cleaner game by the special teams. And then the running game here is what I want to see. And here's the thing, too, I like about this. The mighty Memphis team last week against ULM ran for 319 yards. So I'm expecting a pretty good outing by Mr. Patrick, Mr. Akers, and maybe Mr. Rasul.
Yeah, were you surprised we didn't see Amir Rasul? This is a game where I would think we would see him.
Yeah, no, I definitely think you will. And I think with this game, it'll be a good it'll give you an idea, I think, based on what Jimbo does with that rotation and getting some of those backups in the game, is what he might be doing against Miami. I understand not wanting to go to Rasul too much in that game because of they got behind. I think the plan was to get him some touches. But once they got behind, I think Jimbo kind of went off the plan a little bit. But I think if Akers and Rasul are really going to be the factors that we think they are, I think you're going to see a lot of them this week. Jacquez Patrick is what he is. He's played at this level. He doesn't need more reps. He obviously didn't have much success against Alabama, but that doesn't mean he won't have some success against Miami. He can be used in certain ways. But I think you're going to see those younger backs get a lot of carries, and that's one of the things I really want to see in this game. Also, I want to see the receivers step up. And the offensive line, what I want to see from this game is this could have been a real sleeper. It was the ultimate sandwich game between Alabama and Miami. But with DeAndre going down and a new quarterback, I want to see this team, how they respond to the adversity, because last year I didn't think they responded to the adversity of losing Derwin James very well.
All right, gentlemen, it is time for picks. Let's go with Nebraska and Oregon. Oregon, given 14 points. Gene, who you got?
Is Marcus Mariota still there? I saw the 2 touchdowns.
I think they dropped 77 points last week or something crazy like that.
Yeah, I don't know. Too many points. I'm going to go with Nebraska on this one.
Nebraska escaped Arkansas State. Ira, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm not going to put too much on the first week games. I'm going to go with Nebraska as well. I'll take 14 points.
I've got Oregon to roll and roll big over the Cornhuskers. Louisville's given 10 to North Carolina. Gene's nugget here. This is Gene's statistic. I didn't know this. I'm not taking credit for it. But Louisville hasn't covered in how many games in a row?
5 games Louisville has not covered the spread. This is a 10-pointer. No, North Carolina's, we wondered about that, losing Trubisky, losing Switzer, all those guys. Would there be a significant drop-off? Yeah, there has been a significant drop-off. But every time they don't cover. I mean, Louisville's looked worse and worse, it seems. And it was lost to Purdue last week. Come on, Purdue. No way. Give me those points. I take North Carolina.
I don't know who you got.
Yeah, I'm not thrilled with North Carolina right now, their quarterback situation, but I'll go ahead and I'll go with Carolina as well. I'll take the points.
Give me Louisville and give those 10 all day long. Look at us. Here we go. Pittsburgh's at Penn State. Penn State rolled easily over Akron. Pitt struggled in their football game. Thus, we have a 20.5-point spread for Penn State given to Pitt.
Penn State's going to win the game, but this is one of those teams. I think they're a solid team. They're well coached. I just don't think they're an elite team. I don't know if they're blowing out an in-state rival. Pitt struggled. Again, one game. That's just way too many points. Give me Pitt.
Yeah, I could also see this a game where Pitt maybe was working on some stuff for Penn State during the preseason because they had them in week 2 and which should have been a cakewalk in the opener. So I think you're going to see a much better Pitt team this week, and I think it'll be close. I'll take Pitt the points.
It's tough for me, but I will too also take Pitt, although I think Penn State wins by like 20. I mean, it's really good.
But I like that half point.
I'll take that half point. Auburn's at Clemson. Clemson's favored by 5.5 now. Clemson had no problem, obviously, in week 1 against Kent State, but it's now Kent State, right? Yeah, I know. At least you're going back and forth. But yeah, so Auburn, interesting team Auburn is. They're getting 5.5 on the road. What do you like?
First of all, I like this. This is a great game.
Great game.
2 of these teams. This could be the second best team, I think, in the SEC, and Clemson fighting for that second spot in the ACC too. And we don't know so much about these teams. I'm so curious to see how that's going to go. At the end of the day, I'm going to go playing a night game in Death Valley. That defense is still outstanding for Clemson. I'm going to go with the Tigers. Well, actually, Tigers. That would be the easy way out. Go with the Tigers. I'm going with Clemson.
Clemson?
Yeah, Gene and I are on the same page. This whole thing, I'm going with Clemson.
I got Clemson 21-14. All right, here we go. We've got Oklahoma at Ohio State. The Buckeyes are giving 7.5 to the Sooners. What say you?
I hate to take Urban, but it seems like when the Big 12 just underachieves in these kind of interconference games against good quality opponents, I got to go with Urban and the Yuck Eyes.
I'm going to go with Oklahoma. I'm going to take the points. I'm not real impressed with what I've seen from the JT Barrett. He just has not become what we all thought he was going to be, and so I'll take Oklahoma.
Of course, I'll take the Sooners, getting the 7.5 there. Stanford is at Southern Cal. Southern Cal's given 7. I'll take Stanford. Who you got?
I like the trees, man.
There it is. More Stanford.
We're going with the chalk, taking Southern Cal.
Taking Southern Cal. All right, so our picks are in, and I guess at the end of the day for FSU, that spread is 32. Did I see that? Is that 32?
That's 32.
Who you got?
Well, I looked at last year against OU. They gave up 59 points. Against Auburn, they gave up 58 points.
You did research on this?
Yes.
I'm so proud of you.
New Mexico gave up 59 points last year.
Wow.
So I like that 59-58 points. So I like that number right there. So let's go 59-14. I think it's 59-7. They scored a late touchdown against the Walk-Ons.
How about that? Runaway.
I did not do as much research.
I didn't either.
But I will say Florida State 52, ULM 6.
I'll go Florida State 45-0. So Florida State covers. All 3 of us have the Noles. A big shutout for the Noles. Big day there for Ira Schoffel and Gene Williams. Good job, Ryan Kelly. I'm Jeff Cameron. Thanks so much for watching. We'll talk to you next time on the Warchant.com Report.